Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Last time, we dove into the amazing techniques used to see and measure nanomaterials. Today, we're going to explore why we even bother looking. We're talking about the incredible, sometimes unbelievable properties these tiny materials have. And to help us make sense of it all, we have our expert with us again.
Welcome back. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a genuine pleasure to be here to discuss this important topic. I'm always excited to talk about this because, the properties, that's where the real magic of nanotechnology happens.
I love that. Magic. It really does feel that way sometimes. So for today, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the big picture, the nanoscale revolution. Then we'll get into the two core principles that make everything tick. After that, we'll see those principles in action, looking at how we can literally paint with nanoparticles, control energy on a whole new level, and build things with almost unbelievable strength. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so our first section, the nanoscale revolution. This really gets to the heart of why this whole field is just so different.
It does. And I love the way it's phrased. The material we're looking at mentions a central, captivating truth about nanotechnology. Can you unpack that for us? What is this big truth? That is absolutely the best place to start. The big truth is this: materials just don't play by the same rules when they're at the nanoscale. It's that simple. In our world, a chunk of gold is, well, it's gold. It's yellow, it's shiny, and it doesn't really react with anything. But that's only for the big stuff, the stuff we can see and hold. The moment you start shrinking that same gold down to the nanoscale, we're talking just a few hundred atoms wide, the rules of physics that we're all used to they start to fade away. And what takes over is the weird, wonderful, and incredibly powerful world of quantum mechanics. It's not a small change. It's a total identity crisis for the material.
Absolutely. And you can see it right here with gold, which is really the poster child for this whole phenomenon. Look at a gold ring. It's got that classic yellow color, and it's chemically stable, right? It doesn't rust. But take that exact same gold, don't change the atoms at all, just break it down into tiny little nanometer-sized particles, suddenly its whole personality changes. Its color can become this brilliant ruby red, and its chemical behavior, it completely flips. That stable, noble metal becomes a really powerful catalyst that can drive chemical reactions. It's the same atoms, just in a different configuration, creating what is, for all intents and purposes, a brand new material. And this isn't some strange one-off, it's the defining rule of the nanoworld. Figuring out why this happens is everything.
That's a fantastic lead-in. You said, this isn't magic, it's physics. So let's pull back the curtain. Why is small so different? What are the principles that are causing these huge changes? Right, it all comes down to the physics. And you can boil down almost every single weird and wonderful property of nanomaterials to two main ideas that just take over at that tiny scale. The first is a huge increase in what we call the surface-to-volume ratio, and the second is the rise of quantum effects. Those two things, they're the foundation for everything else.
And these two pillars, you really have to get these to understand the rest. So first, surface effects. That's all about how many atoms are on the outside of the material. And second, quantum effects. That's about the bizarre but totally predictable rules of quantum physics finally getting to run the show. Everything from that red nanogold to the crazy strength of carbon nanotubes, it all comes back to one or usually both of these ideas.
Okay, let's take those one at a time, starting with the first one. You said the dominance of surface effects. It sounds a little technical. Can you make that more concrete for us? What does that actually mean? I can, yeah. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty easy to visualize. Imagine you have a sugar cube. Now, what if you could slice that cube up into billions of tiny, nanometer-sized cubes? The total amount of sugar, the volume, is exactly the same. But the surface area, it has exploded. What was just a few square centimeters of surface is now the size of a football field. You see, at the nanoscale, a huge fraction of the atoms are on the surface, instead of being buried deep inside. And atoms on the surface are different. They have fewer neighbors to bond with, which makes them more exposed, more energetic, and way more ready to react with whatever's around.
And this isn't just theory. It has huge real-world effects. With so many atoms exposed and ready to party, nanoparticles become way more chemically reactive. This is exactly why they're such great catalysts. They speed up reactions. Your car's catalytic converter, for example, uses nanoparticles of platinum to turn harmful exhaust into safer gases. But it changes physical properties, too. Think about melting point. It actually takes less heat to melt gold nanoparticles than a solid gold bar. Why? Well, melting is just breaking bonds. And because so many of those atoms are on the surface, with fewer, weaker bonds to begin with, it's just easier to break them apart. The fundamental properties of the material itself begin to shift.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. More surface equals more action. Now what about that second pillar? This one sounds a little more mind-bending. What do you mean when you say quantum effects take over? Yeah. This is where we leave our everyday intuition behind. In our big macro world, energy seems smooth and continuous. Think of it like a ramp. An electron in a big piece of metal can have any energy value it wants along that ramp. But when you shrink the material way down, you're trapping those electrons in a tiny little space. And in quantum mechanics, when you confine a particle like that, its energy can't be a smooth ramp anymore. It has to become quantized.
Exactly. And the material we're looking at has this perfect analogy for it. It says the energy levels become restricted to specific discrete energy levels, much like the rungs on a ladder. I love that. It means an electron can be on the first rung or the second rung, but it can't hover in between the rungs. And this isn't some minor detail. This quantization is a fundamental shift that completely changes how the material interacts with light, with electricity, everything. It's what unlocks behaviors that are just impossible in a bulk material.
Okay, so we have these two big forces, surface effects and quantum confinement. Let's talk about how we can actually see these at work. Our next section is called Painting with Nanoparticles, which sounds amazing. This seems to be where the changes are most obvious, right? How do these principles mess with the material's color? Oh, they absolutely do. In fact, the way nanomaterials play with light is probably their most stunning trick. It's the perfect showcase for both of our principles. You have quantum dots, which are all about quantum effects, and then you have a phenomenon called surface plasmon resonance in metals, which is all about surface effects. And together they give us a whole new toolbox for creating color.
Let's start with those quantum dots. They sound like the perfect real-world example of quantum confinement. Can you explain what's going on there and why their color depends so much on their size? Of course. So, a quantum dot is basically a tiny little crystal of a semiconductor, and its color is dictated with incredible precision by its physical size. Remember that ladder analogy for energy levels? Well, the size of the quantum dot changes the spacing between the rungs. A smaller dot squeezes the electrons more tightly, and the laws of quantum mechanics say that this forces the energy rungs further apart. A larger dot gives them more room to breathe, so the rungs are closer together. So when you shine a light on them, an electron jumps up to a higher rung. When it falls back down, it spits out that energy as a particle of light. In a small dot, it has a long way to fall, so it releases a high-energy, bluer-colored light. In a larger dot, it's a shorter fall, so it releases a lower-energy, redder light. By just cooking up crystals of different sizes, you can tune the color to be anything you want across the entire rainbow.
And this is not just some cool lab trick. This is technology you can go out and buy right now. This is how those super vibrant QLED TVs work. Each pixel has tiny quantum dots of different sizes that take blue light from an LED and convert it into incredibly pure reds and greens. It makes for a much richer, more accurate picture. And in a totally different universe, in medicine, scientists are using these as tiny little fluorescent beacons. They can attach them to a protein or a cell and literally watch it move through a living system, with each color acting like a unique tracking tag. It's giving us a whole new way to see biology in action.
That is just wild. So what about that other one you mentioned, surface plasmon resonance? What in the world is a collective oscillation of electrons, and how does that make gold turn red? So this one is all about the surface. In a metal nanoparticle, you've got this sea of electrons just swarming on the surface. When light of a very specific color, or wavelength, hits that particle, it can make all of those electrons start sloshing back and forth together in perfect rhythm with the light wave. That synchronized dance is a surface plasmon. When that happens, the nanoparticle gets incredibly good at absorbing and scattering that one specific color of light. So for nanogold, the particles happen to be the perfect size to get in sync with green and blue light, so they just gobble it up. What's left over to bounce to our eyes is the opposite color on the color wheel, a brilliant red. People were using this by accident centuries ago to make stained glass, but today, we use that sensitivity on purpose. That little line on a home pregnancy test? That's gold nanoparticles. When the right hormone is present, it makes the nanoparticles clump together, which changes their plasmon resonance, and boom, you get a visible red line.
From light to power. It makes sense that if you're messing with electrons for color, you're also going to affect electrical properties. Let's move to our fourth section and talk about some of these electrical and magnetic changes. What kind of things do we start to see here? Oh, the changes are just as huge. Electrically, look at carbon nanotubes. Because their structure is so perfect, electrons can literally fly through them with almost no resistance. It's called ballistic transport, like a bullet in a vacuum. They are unbelievably good conductors. Then there's something called piezoelectricity, the ability to create electricity from pressure. At the nanoscale, that effect can be massively amplified. You can even make materials that aren't piezoelectric at all in their normal form become piezoelectric as nanostructures. People are working on nanogenerators that could power tiny devices just by harvesting the energy from vibrations, like your own footsteps, no batteries needed.
Wow, powering things with footsteps sounds like science fiction. Now, the source material brings up a really unique magnetic property that I'd love to understand better. It's called superparamagnetism. What is that, and why does it only happen at the nanoscale? Superparamagnetism is one of my favorite examples because it literally cannot exist outside the nanoscale. So, in a normal magnet, like a piece of iron, you have these little neighborhoods called magnetic domains, where all the tiny atomic magnets point in the same direction. But what happens if you make a particle that's smaller than a single one of those neighborhoods? The whole particle acts like one tiny, powerful magnet. But it's so small that the normal heat energy all around it is actually enough to make it randomly flip its magnetic north and south poles all the time. So if you just leave it alone, all that random flipping means that on average, the material has zero magnetism.
So it's basically a magnet with an on-off switch. That's the perfect way to put it. It's a switch. The instant you apply an external magnetic field, all those little nanomagnets snap to attention. They all align, and the material becomes incredibly magnetic. But, and this is the whole trick, the second you turn that field off, the heat energy takes over again. They go back to flipping around randomly, and the material is completely non-magnetic again. There's zero leftover magnetism. It's a material that's only a magnet when you tell it to be.
How is that on-off switch useful in the real world? Say, in medicine? Oh, it's a total game changer for medicine. For one thing, they make amazing contrast agents for MRIs. You inject them into a patient, and while the MRI's powerful magnet is on, they make certain tissues and blood vessels light up like a Christmas tree. But since they're not magnetic otherwise, they don't stick together and cause clots in the bloodstream. Even more exciting is using them for targeted drug delivery. You can coat these nanoparticles with chemotherapy drugs and inject them. They just float around harmlessly. Then, you can use a powerful magnet outside the body, right over a tumor, to literally grab those nanoparticles as they flow by. You can concentrate the medicine exactly where you need it, which means a stronger dose for the cancer and far fewer side effects for the patient.
That is absolutely incredible. Okay, for our last topic, let's talk about strength. You know, we think of small things as being delicate, but in this world, it seems like the opposite is true. Why do materials get so much stronger when they're nano-sized? Yeah, it seems backward, doesn't it? But it all comes down to the idea of perfection. Any big piece of material, even super strong steel, is full of tiny flaws. Microscopic cracks, grain boundaries that don't line up, atoms missing from the structure. We call these dislocations. And these are the weak points. When you stress the material, that's where a crack starts. But when you build something out of nanoscale grains, you're essentially building it from tiny, almost perfect little bricks. The grains are so small, there's just no room for those big, fatal flaws to even form. By getting rid of the built-in weak spots, you make it incredibly hard for a failure to even begin. The material becomes much, much stronger and tougher. And the superstar here has to be the carbon nanotube. It's basically a sheet of carbon that's only one atom thick, rolled up into a perfect tube. That flawless structure gives it one of the highest strength-to-weight ratios of any material we know of. We're talking many times stronger than steel, but it weighs almost nothing. This is already changing how we build things. We can mix nanotubes into plastics and polymers to make parts for airplanes and cars that are way lighter, which saves fuel, but are also much stronger.
You're also seeing them in high-end sports equipment like bike frames and tennis rackets, and as super tough coatings for industrial parts.
We have covered so much ground here, from color to magnets to strength. If you had to boil it all down for us, what's the one big takeaway about why nanomaterials are so unique, and what does that mean for us going forward? The big takeaway is that this isn't just a list of weird tricks. It's a completely new way of thinking about matter. And it all stems from those two core principles we discussed, the power of the surface and the rules of quantum confinement. Those two things are the cause of all these new optical, electrical, magnetic, and mechanical behaviors. And what that means for the future? It's huge. It means we can stop just accepting materials as we find them, we can become architects. We can create designer materials, built from the ground up to do a specific job, whether that's emitting a very specific color of light, hunting down a tumor, or being unbelievably strong. That ability is going to help us solve some of our biggest problems in medicine, in energy, and in so many other fields.
That's such a powerful way to put it. We really have seen today that at the nanoscale, the rules change completely. And it's all because of two key ideas: that huge increase in surface area and the weird but wonderful world of quantum confinement taking over. And we've seen how that lets us do incredible things, like painting with quantum dots, creating on-off magnets for medicine, and building things with mind-boggling strength. It's not just about finding new materials anymore. It's about designing them.
Thank you so much for walking us through that. It's amazing to think about engineering matter at that level. And for everyone listening, this conversation sets us up perfectly for our next one. We've just learned why nanomaterials are so special, so make sure you join us next time when we dive into the what, all the different types and families of nanomaterials that exist.
Again, a huge thank you to our expert for making these complex topics so clear. And thank you all for tuning in. For more conversations about the technologies that are building our future, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Tech, AI, and Beyond. We'll see you next time.